been done in Norway,
Arguing
and it's
gonna
worked.
do it doesn't take power, though. You can talk
Yes, it
about,
does.
You can talk
What?
about how you
How
want
do you
your
think we ended-
utopian fantasy bullshit
How do you think?
stuff.
How do you?
So here's my view, and let's see how the two leftists, because apparently that's what we've got here, right? Let's see how they respond to this. My view is that we should have a strong central government under a nationalistic viewpoint, and that the state should be extremely powerful, and that you shouldn't worry about powerful politicians as long as they're moral. Why would you worry about them if they were moral?
I wouldn't.
I don't think it's possible to have moral politicians without having a strong check of power. I think that the best incentive structure for a moral politician
So there
is
was no
democracy.
there's no moral kings in your worldview then.
I think that that it's possible to be a moral king, but I
thought
think
you
that
just
it's
said
impossible.
that they had to have checks and balances.
I think it's impossible to maintain a moral monarchy. I think a single king can be moral. Though.
Why is it impossible to maintain a moral monarchy?
Because passing it down, the cruel fate of every benevolent dictatorship is that the next king or the next dictator is not as benevolent. Somewhere down the line, it usually gets fucked up, and you can incentivize less immoral action. You can incentivize more moral leaders through democracy.
So you mean as the institution becomes corrupt, like all institutions do, you can end up with people who become less moral over time as the morality of the population degrades?
No, I think.
Well, then
that,
how would you end up
go
with
up
a moral?
And down, right?
Can you have a moral king with an immoral population?
A moral king with an immoral population, probably, yeah.
How? How would that work?
The moral king could force the immoral population to act in ways.
Would that be moral?
Closer to moral.
Would that be moral? Moral king to force them to be moral?
to force them to be more moral? Yeah, you could create incentive structures that would make them more moral. Absolutely, it's probably better
force,
to send them.
That's not an
force
structure.
You probably should force murderers to go to jail, right?
Okay, right. So let's say you have a population full of, let's say 10% homosexuals, right? And you have a king who's moral, and in his moral basis, being a homosexual is bad, right? Mm-hmm. But the population supports homosexuality. He does not, right? And in this scenario, he's the moral one, right? The population's immoral. If he tried to move the goalpost for them, they would be necessarily upset, right?
What do you mean if he tried to move the goalpost?
So if he tried to say, no, this is immoral, we're not going to have it. Population says, no, we are going to have it, right?
Yeah, that would be bad because it goes against objective morality.
Right. So what happens is that the alignment of the population has to align with the monarch, at least to some degree. Otherwise, he couldn't rule over them. So the question becomes, can you have a moral...
you're saying that they would revolt?
Mm-hmm.
You
can't have a moral king with an immoral population. It doesn't work that way.
That was true before we had kings with all of the military technology of the NSA, of the Department of Defense, of the technologies that we have today.
What do you mean? They had wonderful military technologies, man.
They had wonderful military technologies, but nothing compared to the NSA. You can't tell me that they had
no, but I can tell you this: that war
to the global surveillance system.
Well, that war was worse. It was far worse. The casualty rates were far higher.
It was far worse. To kick back a revolt, you don't need to kill more people. You need to be able to win hearts, minds, and be able to
do you think that
lock out?
Do you think that ancient kings were stupid and didn't understand that they needed to have the hearts and minds of their people that they ruled over? Of course they knew that.
No, of course they did. But that's
they were
very
responsible
different
to their population.
Yeah.
Like a government, like a democracy is not going to be responsible to its population, because if somebody fucks up, we don't know who's fucking up.
Right.
Yes, we do. There are elected leaders.
There's people that are not elected that also lead the country,
so
like the managerial state and the administrative state, and we don't elect all of them.
So those are appointed, right, by the people that we elect?
Yeah, but we don't know who's always
Well, no,
elected.
they're not. Actually, no, they're not.
Yeah,
you have people in places of power right now that you never elected anybody in your entire lifetime.
You mean like in corporations?
Not just, well, sure, in corporations as well, but we're talking about government bodies.
Positions.
We're talking about actual government bodies.
So,
there's people who have been appointed to positions who are still there, who you had no say over in your entire lifetime, ever.
Yeah, and they can pass laws that you don't even approve of.
Like who? Wait, hold on. Like who?
Like you could have a postmaster general, man, or whatever. You could have
a postmaster general is elected or is appointed by an elected figure.
Yes, but is it a 10-year? Like it's something you can do for 50 years, right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
because some people are good at their job, and so we keep them there.
So that's a person who would be in a place of power that was not put there by a person who's in the current electorate anymore. That's what I'm saying.
Who's okay? Yeah, no, you're not going to be able to have perfect representation ever. I agree.
Okay, but that's what he's saying. Is he's saying that you can have people who go into these elected positions or non-elected positions who stay there for a lifetime, right? Who are not actually elected to any of these positions. And they're powerful positions. An elected
figure. They're powerful positions through which democracy has put them there. Maybe not directly. Maybe we didn't elect them directly, but we elected somebody who appointed them. Maybe not right now, but yeah.
So maybe the previous generation elected the people who put them there, and they're still there post-generation is my point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Democracy lags. No way.
It does.
Well, I mean, is democracy a monolith? Don't you think that a generation apart are going to have different values and different things that they want done for their nation?
They're going to have pretty different values, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a monolith. You can't be like, well, the democracy of my parents has spoken for me.
Well, see, the other problem...
Wait, no.
Wait.
Can I actually respond?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, thank you. No, because that's still democracy, and it still accounts for my original contention of why democracy was good, which is that if you ask the greatest number of people, you're going to account for the greatest number of biases, right? So as long as a democracy does it, it's still better than no democracy.
How is it sustainable in the long run?
America's the longest running democracy in the world.
Not as long as the Byzantine Empire. Woo!
Yeah, the Byzantine Empire, through a number of rulers, through ups and downs, through a bunch of shit, through really, really immoral rulers, through really, really moral rulers, and yet none of them have been able to come close to the accomplishments of the United States of America.
Yeah, but have you ever read Spengler's Decline of the West? Because that's what I'm seeing in front of me. I'm seeing a rise in homelessness, and I'm seeing poverty all over the fucking place, and you ain't voting that shit out.
You aren't? How did they do it in Norway then? They did.
Because that's Norway! We're America!
Do you think that America doesn't follow democratic will? Do you not
America's not Norway!
No, but we can absolutely convince people to be more progressive. We've done it before.
We can try to, but there's also other people like white nationalists in this country, other ethno-nationalists, conservatives, libertarians that can also vote. Ever think of that?
They sure can. It's a good thing that socialism's on the rise, right? It's a good thing that we can actually make
but not your kind of socialism.
Yes, it is.
Authoritarian kind of socialism that's rising
You never just demonstrated that. When I talked about socialism, you never counteracted the fact that the biggest socialist movements are going to be democratic.
But that's social democracy. That's not the same thing as communism.
No, democratic. Okay, first of all, I'm not a communist. Second of all, social democracy is
when
better
did that
than,
change?
like 5 months.
Shut up, commie. No,
no. I'm a market socialist. First of all. Second of all, democratic or social democracy is still better than capitalism. No.
Something that's never going to actually have any impact on the world.
What do you mean something that's never going to have an impact on the world?
It's not existing
now. The third positionist? Third positionism also sure as hell doesn't exist around the world. I advocate for social democracy. Norway is pretty damn close to market.
We have a bigger chance of the
40% of its GDP is government spending. A third of its, half of its foresting industry is worker cooperatives. The social wealth funds create massive swaths of their economy. They have almost the optional work utopia of socialist fever dream through their welfare state. They have almost market socialism in Norway.
The population to vote on this. You got to get the You got to get the
I do. I agree, which is why we should advocate for the things we believe in.
We can advocate for it, but there's always going to be opposition, and you can't just
sure. And we can overcome opposition, right? We can argue. We can be better at rhetoric. It's been done in Norway.
Arguing and it's going to do it doesn't take power, though. You can talk
Yes, it
about,
does.
You can talk
What?
about how you
How
want
do you
your
think we ended-
utopian fantasy bullshit
How do you think?
stuff
How do you think women got the right to vote?
by protesting and getting
Yeah, we
out on the
argued.
street.
We got mad at people. We protested.
They didn't
because
just
a bunch of
argue on a
elite-
fucking computer
Well,
screen.
they got the right to
fucking
vote
got-
because a bunch of elite assholes convinced them that it'd be good for them, even though nationally none of them actually wanted to do it. That's how that. I mean, that's how that went down. Just
Really,
you know.
really? How are we? How are you?
Why don't you
saying
look
that?
at the polling from the time of suffrage? Suffragettes were a small minority. Most women were against the right to vote. They didn't want it. They didn't care about it.
Okay, most women were against the right to vote, but
Yeah.
most of the population wasn't, right? It was
no. Well, I don't think most men wanted them to have the right to vote either. To be honest,
it was the
with
majority.
you.
Okay, I mean, I can go look at that. We can look
Mhm.
at polling data from the time,
Go
but
ahead.
when we look at the actual trends of our democracy, we can see that it does follow popular will, right? Do you really need data to demonstrate that? Because I can definitely
Well, I
demonstrate.
mean,
that
it
easily.
doesn't always
bad, but
follow
data
popular.
doesn't tell you everything.
Well, wait. It doesn't always follow popular will.
No, but
It
where people
follows
care about
popular
it,
will of the voting bloc, which most of our democracy is not.
generally, when we look at polling trends as opposed to policy, what we can see is that there is a correlation between policy and the things people want on all issues that people care about. On the issues that people don't care about, there's a stronger correlation with money, obviously. But when on the issues that people do care about, democracy is working. Just people have to care.
So we have to make them care.
Okay, if you
We gotta
really
be
want,
Care Bears.
okay, cool. I can. Oh wow, care. That's definitely the type of care I meant. True.
Oh, it's kind of funny, you know.
I mean, no, you have good intentions. I'm not gonna like it.
Leave
chide you
Shamrock
on
Bear
that.
alone, okay?
Yeah. I'm not gonna chide you on that, but you know, this like hoity-toity, you know, utopian idea that we can all just come to, like, yeah, there's good ways of uniting a country, but sometimes people need strength to unite themselves over, and weakness does not unite people. Weakness is just never going to work either. So you have to have a balance between
This is why
strong
I
and
advocate
weak.
for weakness. True.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you say that it is true that generally speaking, men do follow strength?
True.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like, yeah, I think that there's something to be said when Carl's like, look, men are going to be looking for a strong leader, and necessarily a strong leader is probably going to be strongly opinionated, and he may, disagree with a whole lot of that voting block, and the will of the people type of thing, and we end up with something out of that.